Thank you so much for having me here to speak today, and it's an honor to be here on this esteemed panel. My name is Jacob Susman. I'm the founder and CEO of OwnEnergy. As Herb mentioned, also a member of the Goldman Sachs team that invested in Horizon Wind Energy and actually some of the other companies that we've seen up here on the board today. So I've been fortunate to dedicated the past 10 years of my career to the renewable energy sector and have learned a lot, and hopefully try to share some of those insights with you today. A brief background on OwnEnergy, and I'm going to spend more of my time today talking about trends in wind more broadly. We are a developer of community wind farms, and I'll explain a little bit more what community wind means. We're based here in Brooklyn, New York. We have a team that all emanate from places like Goldman, Credit Suisse, FPL Energy, AES, Horizon, Noble, and GE. And strong venture capital backing that's helping us build our business. So more on that in a little bit. Quickly, as part of the update on wind energy, wind has continued its growth almost miraculously in 2008 relative to turbulence in the global markets. In global terms, wind grew to 120 gigawatts of installed capacity, which was a 29% increase on the year prior. And in the U.S. in particular, the increase was 51% over 2007. And the U.S. is now the largest installed base of wind capacity in the world. These are data, as are the next couple slides, from the American Wind Energy Association, AWEA, from its annual report. What I think is even more interesting is that it is now the growth fuel type in the U.S. power sector. If you look on this chart to the left, in 2008, 42% of all new capacity additions that came online were in the form of wind. Those are the green bars on the left. Interesting, if you look a few years prior at the orange bars, those were dual-fired facilities, so conventional carbon-emitting, less efficient power. Looks like those orange bars are going away. So that's good news, we think, for renewables and for climate change and for society. On the right, though, you see one of the major limiting factors, at least in U.S. wind, is transmission. There are over 300,000 megawatts of proposed wind projects in transmission queues around the United States. We said on the prior slide that there's 120,000 of total installed capacity worldwide. There were about 8,000 megawatts of new wind installed in the United States last year, and the American Wind Energy Association is targeting about the same amount for 2009. So 8 on 300,000 means some high proportion of these 300,000 are not likely to make it. Or there's going to have to be massive amounts of new transmission built in the United States. And for those who've been involved in infrastructure development of any kind, you may share my skepticism that that's going to happen fast enough to build all those megawatts. So why are people so optimistic about wind then? Well, for one reason, as some folks in the Obama administration are rumored to have said, the climate bill that's working its way through Congress is effectively a jobs bill. This is a major jobs-creating industry. In fact, in October of this past year, when the U.S. economy lost 240,000 jobs in a single month, in 2008, the wind industry added 35,000 jobs, taking it up to 85,000 that year. Now, some of these jobs depend on there to be investment in manufacturing and new wind farms, as you can see in the bottom 3 bars here. The good news is that more turbine suppliers are setting up shop in the United States, and we're going to have more and more capacity jobs, manufacturing jobs coming into the U.S. economy. Some of these operations and construction jobs, though, depend on those hundreds of thousands of megawatts actually getting built. And some of those may be at risk depending on the continued turbulence in the economy. But all told, we expect significant more jobs creation to come from the wind energy business. The big green bar are service providers like wind developers, good news, and also financial services, engineering services, and also some of the supply chain folks who are involved in getting the wind turbines and the wind farm projects to market. Lots of jobs flowing from the wind business if we can get the industry set up the right way. So is it set up the right way today? I think by and large the answer is yes, and I'm going to suggest a little tweak that we think could make it even more effective in the United States. Today, U.S. wind is dominated by large-scale IPPs, independent power producers, and large-scale utilities. I think the data point here is that 76% of the installed wind today, just off this chart alone, is owned by large-scale IPPs and large-scale utilities. We've discussed over the course of the day that most of the wind development that's taken place today has been just taking the conventional power style of developing projects and grafting it onto these new renewables technologies. And that's what these 76% of companies are doing. There are those who would argue, though, that's not necessarily the most efficient case, perhaps not the most jobs creating and local economy boosting case. So while so many of these large IPPs develop wind farms in the traditional large-scale industrial format, we are big believers at OwnEnergy in a more distributed form of wind farm development that focuses on communities, that capitalizes on the smaller and more modular nature of renewables in these community-backed setups. So there are actually some wonderful examples of more distributed community-style wind emanating from Europe in particular, where in Denmark, 83% of installed wind has been with this local ownership model, and in Germany, more like 45%. Remember, what is one of the world's top 3 wind markets is actually community developed and owned. So we see a dawn of this distributed community model on the rise. We're big fans of the traditional IPP and utility approach, but we think there's an important role to be played for distributed community projects as well. We're starting to see some cracks in the armor, in fact, of the large-scale approach, and the one area of Mr. Palmer's talk that I would absolutely agree with is that it is going to be an incredible challenge to try to move all of the electrons out from that incredibly windy corridor in the middle of the country to the coasts where it's most likely to be used. And to that end, those of us in the industry who were so excited to hear of Mr. Boone Pickens' project, the fact that he announced a 2,000 turbine project at the time signaled the ever-growing size of wind farms in the United States, and it was an exciting moment to think that there was going to be that scale of investment. So we were all disappointed to learn just this past summer that Mr. Pickens had put his project on hold. I, for one, as somebody who benefited from his television commercials, would love to see him be successful. But I do think this sends an important message, which is that we probably have topped off in how big wind farms ought to go. In fact, maybe we ought to be looking for ways to develop them at a smaller, localized scale. To that end, you started to see the first signs of this in terms of the actual data coming out of the wind industry in the drop from 2007 to 2008 in average project size, from 100 to 70 megawatts. Perhaps a modest drop, and 1 year does not a trend make, but it does tell you that when markets get turbulent and times get tough, it becomes easier to develop smaller projects. Less capital is required, less transmission capacity is required, and a number of other reasons that smaller projects seem to make sense in wind.